As the second hour of Japanese attacks proceeds, the American forces on Oahu are already completely defeated from an immediate tactical viewpoint. That neither stops the Japanese from continuing their attacks, nor the Americans from fighting back. After missing Fusato Iida's zeros at Kaneohe, Lewis Sanders' squad of 4 planes has now spotted them along the coast, heading in towards Wheeler Field. From an altitude of 11,000 feet, they now dive towards the 6 enemy fighters. Thacker's guns jam immediately, but he still dives into the fray, preventing the Zeros from coming into formation by making dry runs at them. Sanders opens fire on the lead plane and sees his tracers tear into the Zero's fuselage. The plane noses up, then falls off to the right, smoking. Sanders executes a quick clearing turn from a good distance away. He sees Gordon Sterling engage a Zero and moves in to help. Rasmussen gets on the tail of another enemy. He fires repeatedly as they fly into a chase. Focused on his plane, Rasmussen does not see a second Zero coming at him from the side. That plane can't get a clean shot, though, without risking hitting his comrade. Rasmussen scores the kill shot, and the Japanese plane dives out of control to the ground, trailing smoke. The second plane tries to ram Rasmussen. His canopy is torn off, and he loses control of the plane.
I thought I'd been killed. I was sure that the top of my head had been shot off. I could feel a mass up there and felt sure it was my brains. But I was having such a fight to control the plane that it took a minute or two before I could gingerly put a hand to the top of my helmet. All that was there was a pile of plexiglass. No blood, not a scratch.
Thacker is hit by 20mm gunfire, and with his plane damaged, he falls out of formation and heads back to Wheeler. Sterling is now in a near vertical dive, pouring bullets into a Zero, but he comes into fire from another Zero that swings in on his tail and peppers him with bullets. Sterling's plane starts belching smoke. Sanders, although likely too far away, dives and turns in behind the row to engage the rear Zero at maximum range. The line of 4 aircraft, Zero, Sterling's burning P-36, Zero, Sanders, disappears into a cloud. In his combat report, Sanders will state, "The way they'd been going, they couldn't have pulled out, so it was obvious that all 3 went into the sea." He is wrong, though. The 2 Zeros, although badly damaged, make it back to the carriers. Sterling, however, is lost, presumed dead, somewhere in Kaneohe Bay. One of the Zeros that Sanders just engaged and damaged is actually Fujita's, whose trip back will now be nerve-wracking as he fears he will fall out of the sky at any moment. Rasmussen dove into a cloud for cover and is struggling to regain control, but the plane is almost impossible to maneuver. Meanwhile, Sanders circles the area, the remaining Zeros having moved on, but he finds one straggler and confronts him. They climb and twist, maneuvering to get a clear shot at the other's tail. In the end, Sanders runs out of ammunition and disengages from the more modern and more powerful enemy fighter. Rasmussen has by now regained some control of the plane, but it's a mess and he heads for Wheeler. Sanders falls in to escort him and they head back together. It will be a few hours before Peggy Olsson finds out that her fiancé has died, but back at Schofield, she already fears the worst.
Oh, I was really scared. I was really scared. And I was busy. Your insides quiver when you're scared, and you have to go to the bathroom all the time. Your kidneys would overwork. It's a terrible feeling. We'd never been around anything like this.
In the afternoon, she finally gets the terrible news.
Gordon and I would have been married in the spring. I didn't want to get married right away. I was having too good a time. One of the girls dated a friend of Gordon's who was in the same pursuit squadron. She came and told me. She said he was lost, so he was presumed dead. I had a terrible headache, and I was scared.
Rows of Japanese planes are now heading for their rendezvous point as they run out of ammunition or take damage. But there are still many planes making their runs, bombing, dive bombing, and strafing their targets. Some of these planes are intercepted by pilots Rogers, Brown, and Danes, who took off earlier from Halewa. They attack some of the planes, but the Japanese show no interest in engaging and only take evasive action. With their returning planes too far apart, the Americans cannot organize a concerted attack. They do manage to engage single planes a few times, but score no definite hits. In one of the engagements, Dane's plane is damaged, so he returns to Halewa, gets another plane, and takes off again. In the meantime, Rogers and Brown think they've worked out where the Japanese planes are rendezvousing, so they proceed to Kaena Point at Oahu's northwestern tip. Just as Danes is returning to Halewa, First Lieutenant Webster leaves the small field in a P-36. Rogers and Brown have now radioed in their suspicions, and Webster follows them towards Kaena Point. Hickam is now under attack from the Japanese dive bombers, and at Pearl, with Nevada no longer a target, California is taking fire. Well, she's also on fire, with flames engulfing casemates numbers 3, 5, and 7. At 9:15, Captain Bunkley returns from ashore and assumes command. Dive bombers are now coming at her on the port side. In the harbor entrance, Helm now comes under fire from a small enemy fighter. The plane comes in from the northwest, approaching the ship from astern. As the sailors observe over and over today, the dive of the Japanese is not so much a dive as it is a very steep glide. The after machine gunners open fire, but do not hit the attacker. Just as it levels out of this diving glide, it drops 2 bombs. The helm is swinging rapidly to port though, and both bombs are near misses, exploding in the water 50 yards off the port bow and 20 yards off the starboard bow. The ship shakes violently, and all forward parts are deluged with water. The recently repaired remote steering is knocked out though, as are several navigation instruments. The helmsman returns to manual steering. Throughout the second wave, the horizontal bombers circling far above ply their trade, but the massive amount of smoke has made targeting difficult, and there's far less to hit anyway. As a result, the heavy bombers of the second wave do a lot less damage than the first. See, as I said before, the Japanese are using armor-piercing bombs. They don't detonate on impact. Instead, they pierce the ships and release their destructive power inside. The heavy bomb used the most today is the Type 99 No. 80 Mark V. It's a 1,681-pound teardrop-shaped bomb with 66 pounds of explosives, adopted only this year. It's basically a converted 18-inch armor-piercing shell capable of penetrating 7 inches of armor. The dive bombers have lighter bombs, but they have some serious punch. To get some armor-piercing capability, they use concrete-piercing land bombs. Mostly the Type 98 No. 25, weighing 532 pounds and packing 211 pounds of picric acid, or Type 98 explosive. Designed in 1937 and in service from 1938, these are capable of penetrating more than 16 inches of reinforced concrete. Whatever they hit, they do serious damage. Right now, dive bombers are approaching Pyro from the port bow, coming in from an altitude of 5,000 feet and releasing Type 98 bombs. They miss, but one bomb lands on the concrete dock 12 feet from the ship's side amidships. It penetrates the thick, reinforced dock concrete and explodes in the hollow underneath the dock, jarring the entire ship. A human being, in its immediate explosive range, will simply cease to exist, literally physically disappear.
When a bomb hits, it's a feeling or a sound you'll never forget. It's just the rending of metal and a concussion that's huge, just like something was picking the ship out of water and bobbing it around or something. I was on a ship that was torpedoed afterwards, and it's the same thing. It's a sensation you can't really describe.
Heavy or not, attacks are now underway from planes coming in from the direction of Schofield, aiming at the destroyers. Down by Pearl City, the Curtis is on fire after Suzuki's plane crashed into her crane and is still being targeted by new bombing runs. Many miss, like one that hits the stern mooring buoy. Some fall on the docks, sending debris all over the ship. One hits the ship on the starboard side of the boat deck, passes through the carpenter shop and the radio repair shop, and enters the hangar and detonates on the main deck. This explosion destroys bulkheads and that part of the deck within a 30-foot radius. Lots of equipment is destroyed in the explosions. Some of it. Curtis is not in good shape. Across the channel at Ford, Dobbin is attacked by 3 enemy planes, dropping a bomb each, all of them near misses. Fragments strike the stern of the ship though, damaging No. 4 AA gun. Strafing, and the fragments from the near-miss explosions, kills 3 crewmen and injures 2. A group of 12 bombers now comes in and attacks the dry docks again. There, many ships are already on fire. The crew of the Downs abandoned ship only a few minutes ago. The ship is now consumed in flames with firefighters, with men from the ship Cassine and yard employees manning fire hoses and desperately spraying her with water. Shortly after 9:15, the Downs goes up in a terrific explosion, with flames shooting 60 feet in the air and fragments raining down everywhere. The hoses are practically torn away from the men trying to quell the fire. Cassine is also heavily damaged by the explosion. There are fires everywhere, and anyone who isn't fighting, wounded, or dead is now a firefighter. The strafing enemy planes make the job a lot more difficult. On the Tennessee, Seaman Jack Kelly is one of them.
The oil from the Arizona kept coming in our direction, and there was a sea of fire around us. The old paint on the ship, 50 coats of paint on it, was burning, and the deck was burning. Once you got the deck put out, and the paint on the side of the ship put out, you could hang over the rail and keep the fire knocked down. Of course, every few minutes a plane would come over strafing and chipping splinters out of the deck, and we would throw our hose down and run under the overhang of the turret until it passed. There were several strafings that hit the deck that we were on, probably a half dozen. I mean, we would throw down the fire hose and get out of the way. You could see them coming in, and you could tell if they were coming your way. When the splinters go chipping out of the deck, nobody has to tell you to get out of the way. You go hunt someplace. In my division, there wasn't anybody that got hit. Now, they may have been strafing on other parts of the ship that I didn't see, but we were probably strafed a half dozen times. We stayed on keeping the fire put out, contained, or however you want to put it, until the entire attack was over.
There were bodies of men. I'd seen this from above, but it didn't register clearly until I got on the quarterdeck, and these people were zombies in essence. They were burned completely white. Their skin was just as white as if you'd taken a bucket of whitewash and painted it white. Their hair was burned off. Their eyebrows were burned off. The pitiful remnants of their uniforms in their crotch was a charred remnant. The insoles of their shoes was about the only thing that was left on these bodies. They were moving like robots. Their arms were out, held away from their bodies, and they were stumping along the decks. These were burned men.
Pilots Rogers and Brown have now arrived at Kyhle Point, and it is indeed the enemy rendezvous point. While they take in the situation, they're joined by Webster, who took off from Halewa, and Lieutenant Moore, who's flown up on his own from Wheeler. Rogers and Webster go after 2 Japanese Vals together, but the gunners on the planes answer with effective fire. Rogers' plane is seriously damaged, and Webster's hit in the leg. They fall away to head back to Halewa. As they're falling back, 2 Japanese fighters come after Rogers, who dips into a steep dive, feints one direction, then turns sharply in the other, losing one of his pursuing enemies. The other sticks right on his tail. Brown has seen what is about to happen and is already in a steep dive towards the pursuer. He's diving straight at him and from 50 feet away fires a burst from his guns, sending the attacker tumbling to the ground. Rogers and Webster head out. Moore is in hot pursuit of a Zero, but the pilot escapes into a cloud. But now Brown is in trouble. He's chased by a dozen Zeros in formation. He decides to throw a Hail Mary, climbs, rolls back, turning in the opposite direction, and comes in straight towards the Japanese formation at full speed. The mad move pays off when he scatters the Zeros and disappears into a cloud. On the other side, he finds the pilot that escaped Moore. He shoots at him. Smoke bursts from the Japanese plane, but it's now speeding out to sea, so Moore abandons the chase. Clearly outnumbered and running low on ammo, Moore and Brown also turn towards Halewa. At Pearl, the attack is tapering off, but the bombs are still falling, like when the Honolulu is hit and flooded. She takes damage to her oil tanks, there are multiple leaks, and the decks buckle. The American fleet's subs are now put on high alert in preparation for a hunt for the Japanese carrier fleet. Meanwhile, Destroyer Blue passes the channel entrance buoys and heads out to sea. Her mission for now is to patrol for enemy subs. The Condor is underway on a minesweeping assignment. Dale has already set up a perimeter outside the harbor. The Perry, Cockatoo, Crossbill, Phelps, and other ships are making for the entrance. They are preparing to fight against the Japanese land invader they believe will follow the aerial attack, or to join Halsey and the Enterprise and fight the Kido Butai, if they can find it. At 9:26, the order from Battlefleet Command goes out. Battleships remain in port until further orders. Send all destroyers to sea and destroy enemy submarines. Follow them by all cruisers to join Halsey. Now, I understand the Navy are sticklers for clarity of order, and I don't really want to make light of it, but I'm pretty sure the battleships aren't going anywhere. The only one that would have a chance at this point would be the Pennsylvania, but right now that hope is dashed too. Remember that she'd been hit while in dry dock, right? Well, the flames are not bad enough to put her out of order, and now they've started flooding the dry dock to bring her out and then make her ready despite the damage. But in the docks right next to her, the destroyers Dow's and Cassine are seriously on fire. Fire that now ignites the paint on the starboard side of the battleship Pennsylvania. No hoses available for firefighting because they're all in use to fight the fires on Dow's and Cassine, so the fire quickly spreads. On the Curtis, the fire is also spreading, and they now order the engine room abandoned. On the California, yet another fire breaks out. Fires are now burning on the main deck, starboard side, F Division compartment, and casemates numbers 3, 5, and 7. Curtis is a pretty new ship, actually, commissioned just over 12 months ago, and it's one of the first 14 ships that has CXAM-1 radar. This is the first production radar system on American naval vessels. 19 men die today on the Curtis. The light cruiser Raleigh, the third American naval ship named after that city, was launched back in 1922. She spent most of her career in the Atlantic Ocean. From 1936 to 38, served in neutrality patrols during the Spanish Civil War. After that, she's overhauled and then trains at Guantanamo Bay before being sent to San Diego. She arrives in Pearl Harbor in 1939. She has several wounded crewmen today, but none are killed. CXM radar, by the way, just to backtrack a bit, is also on the California, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and the Carrier Enterprise. And just for you out there that like to win trivia contests, radar is an acronym. It stands for Radio Detection and Ranging. A near acronym, okay. As the name implies, it uses radio waves to judge the velocity and range of foreign objects. Radio waves from a transmitter reflect off of the object and back to a receiver, and this provides information about speeds and location. Last year, Britain produced a 25 kilowatt cavity magnetron, which can power radar pulses, that was licensed to the US since Britain could not afford to develop it because of the war. Pearl Harbor really is just a stone's throw from Honolulu. I mean, here's a close-up map image. Honolulu has been the capital of the Hawaiian Islands since the mid-19th century and is now the capital of the Hawaiian Islands American Territory. The royal family and its descendants and American missionaries turned the city into a bustling and modern capital and a center of commerce. Well, there were also the whalers who relied on the brothels and taverns, of course. Despite some rather turbulent times, the overthrow of the Hawaiian monarchy, the annexation of the islands by the US, Honolulu has remained the capital. It's also the largest city, the main civilian seaport, and the main airport. Over the past few decades, the population has boomed, more than doubling from 83,000 in 1920 to nearly 180,000 in 1940. In Honolulu and across the island, the Japanese have not targeted civilians to any meaningful degree. Well, at least not on purpose. But the attack still affects the civilian population. They are scared, but a few of them also fall victim to the attack. A lot of civilian casualties were caused by our own anti-aircraft shells. And as the general paranoia sets in, trigger-happy soldiers assigned to guard the electric transformers and the reservoirs will shoot at anything that looks suspicious. It's the civilian police that should be keeping order outside the military installations, but there are only 250 policemen for the entire island. And after all, it is the military police that have jurisdiction over said trigger-happy soldiers. To put it simply, although Honolulu has been spared a full-on hit, the impact of the attack is very much felt. We'll get back to how it further affects Americans of Japanese origin in a minute. Right now, the attack is not quite over yet. Now, the crews at Wheeler have managed to scramble 3 squadrons of fighter planes that still work. They take off. The pilots are none of the ones we've seen so far. These are rested and combat ready, but there's one problem. There's no one to fight. Although Fuchida is still circling above Pearl Harbor, and there are isolated planes still doing mischief in some places, there's no enemy unit or formation that can be easily targeted. The pilots from before, Taylor, Welch, Sanders, Thacker, Rasmussen, Sterling, Brown, Rogers, Danes, Moore, and Webster, have together downed at least 10 planes, more than a third of the planes the Japanese have lost during the whole attack. Only one of them, Gordon Sterling, has fallen in combat. Unfortunately, one more of them will soon die today, although not at the hands of the Japanese. By now, they've all landed. You might expect me to say safely, but that is not always the case. Moore, Webster, Roberts, and Brown come down at Halewa, and despite some pretty banged up planes, their approach and landings are uneventful. As we know, Taylor came down with some difficulty, but he's okay at the dispensary at Wheeler now. Danes and Welch are also at Wheeler after coming in just fine. When Sanders, Thackers, and Rasmussen tried to land a few minutes ago, though, it's different. Thacker comes in first. On his approach, he's immediately under fire from the field. Remember, this is when the Japanese planes are still coming in hard, 15 minutes ago, which feels like forever. Anyhow, Thacker pulls up and hides from the friendly fire in the clouds. Sanders and Rasmussen are a few minutes behind him, but Rasmussen's plane is literally falling apart around him. Again, they come under friendly fire. Rasmussen has no choice and just heads for the landing field in a hail of bullets. Sanders tries to signal that they're friendly, but no dice. It's only when Rasmussen is practically on the ground that they stop firing at him. Thacker then comes out of the clouds and all 3 can land. Now, shortly after 9:30, Danes and Welch will go at it again. One more run to see if they can catch something. Danes traded his battered P-40 for a P-36, but Welch is still in the newer fighter, though not freshly armed and serviced. They circle over the island a few times, but like their colleagues, they can't find anything to chase. They return to Wheeler. The crew there has a pretty short memory though, so once again, they fire at the friendly pilots. Welch's plane takes some hits, but he lands okay. John Danes, however, takes shots to his plane and send it crashing into a nearby golf course, where he dies. At Pearl, another destroyer, Aylwin, breaks out into the open sea. The all-ensign crew aboard has pulled off the unlikely. The ship's actual captain, Lieutenant Commander Rogers, will follow in an hour or so, but Ensign Kaplan, the senior of the 4 ensigns, will not stop or wait for him. He has orders to meet Enterprise, but beyond that, he's worried about all the reports of enemy submarine contact. On the Dale, they worry about something else. Dale's action report reads, several sampans running for the port of Honolulu were passed close aboard. White flags, not rags or pieces of wearing apparel, were flown from the masts of these craft. Although difficulty was had in restraining several members of the crew, fire was not opened on the sampans. These sampans are civilians, part of the vibrant trade between Japan and Hawaii. Like we've said, Oahu has a large American-Japanese community, mostly families that have come to work on the pineapple plantations and in the rice fields. Others are fishermen, tradesmen, or even U.S. military. They are Americans of immigrant background, like most other Americans. But they faced discrimination already before the attack. One of them, fisherman Thompson Izawa, asked by Dorinda Stagner if choosing between Japan and the U.S. was an issue, will answer, never. It was never a question for us. We were absolutely Americans. We were loyal. Already 2 hours ago, in the middle of the first attack, the first Americans of Japanese origin are rounded up.
All the neighbors, the Japanese neighbors, were at my home. It was easy for the military to pick us up. They put us in a truck and hauled us all to the mountains and left us there under guard. They had fixed bayonets. The following day, they transported us to Waipahu, and we stayed there 2 to 3 weeks. We ate rice balls, and they brought us blankets and pillows. We slept on the floor. We survived. That's the main thing. We survived. Several days after the attack, non-Japanese people were allowed to go home. We were not.
It strikes me that so far, I haven't really spoken of Japan's leader at all. Emperor Hirohito. 40 years old, he's been emperor since 1926. He is Japan's head of state, so he is technically responsible for their decision on December 1st to make war on Britain, the Netherlands, and the United States of America. But to be honest, he reigns more than he rules. There were many powers given to the emperor in 1889 in the Meiji Constitution, but by now, those have mostly been given to the Army or Navy Chiefs of Staff or government ministers. He is seen as a god by much of the Japanese population, sure, but much like the British monarchy, he has the right to be consulted about affairs of state, but he doesn't actually govern. What he usually does is take the policies the government has created and then give them legitimacy by declaring them his imperial will. The liaison conferences, which produce the decisions, are followed by imperial conferences that give them legitimacy. Of course, the military dominates the liaison conferences, and he has not vetoed any of their decisions. Even when the decision for war is made official December 1st by Hirohito, the real decision, was made November 27th at the liaison conference. He personally opposed signing alliance with the Axis powers and moving troops into Indochina, believing, unlike the government, that these would not deter the US but provoke greater hostility between the two nations. He does, as we'll see later, break tradition at the Imperial Conference in early September and voice his objection to him blue-eyed devotion to the path of war of the ministers and high command. But whether or not he does not agree with the decisions of the government, he has always aimed to emulate the British constitutional monarchy and not become an imperial despot. But it is his face that is the face of the enemy today. Their attack is more or less over, but the cleanup will last for months, well, years, and the magnitude of the disaster starts to sink in. Kyhle, on the Tennessee, is fighting fires, but during the early part of the attack was under decks.
When I came topside, that was one of the times I would say I was most depressed in my life. When we went to general quarters, here was this array of battleships sitting out there looking free and trim. And when I came up and ran out topside, why, the West Virginia was settling on the bottom beside us. And I looked behind, and the Arizona was just one big ball of fire. And up ahead to the left, the Oklahoma had turned upside down, with the screws sticking up in the air. It made me wonder where we ever got the idea that we were so secure.
There's no sugarcoating it. It's been a bad couple of hours for the US. 1 harbor tug sunk, 3 cruisers damaged, 3 destroyers damaged, 4 battleships damaged, 1 ex-battleship, the Utah, sunk, 4 battleships sunk, 3 other ships damaged, 188 aircraft destroyed, and 159 aircraft damaged, 2,335 dead, and 1,143 wounded servicemen and women, 3 civilian aircraft shot down, 68 civilians killed, and 35 wounded. And when you compare that to the Japanese losses, it's shockingly disproportionate. 5 midget submarines lost, 29 aircraft destroyed and 74 damaged, 64 men killed, and 1 captured. But as we shall see in the next 90 minutes, this tactical achievement might in fact be a Pyrrhic victory, one that comes at a greater cost than its benefit. Nonetheless, at this point it is bitter, and for the people suffering this defeat, it will leave a mark on their lives. It's undeniably a personal tragedy that will stay with them as long as they live.
When I think about Pearl Harbor and the attack, the only thing I can say is that it was a horrible thing. The attack itself was not as bad as some of the other battles we had later. We lost more men, but we went into them prepared. What made Pearl so bad was that it was such a surprise. Some of the things you saw when they picked up men that had been in the water burned, holes in their cheeks and trying to smoke, and things like that, it just sets an image that is everlasting on you.
But now, at 9:39 a.m. December 7th, as the Japanese leave, there is still No time for reflection. Straggler planes are still firing. Ships are heading out in pursuit of the enemy. Fires are burning. Wounded people and equipment need saving. And hundreds are still trapped on or in burning ships. And what if the Japanese invade?